the idea that the U.S. is terrible, I understand there are absolutely problems here, but there are problems in Europe too. There absolutely are. And I think what's really interesting is we can never escape ourselves. So you moving abroad does not mean that you're going to escape all your problems and troubles and issues. And there are things that are tough about living in Europe. There are things that are tough about living in America.
Yeah.
And isn't it beautiful that we can actually learn from each other, as I think we should?
I think we should too. Today, I'm joined by a very, very special guest, Helene Sula. With over 1.7 million followers across platforms, Helene Sula, aka Helene in Between, is a successful travel blogger, content creator, business owner, and now author. Helene gives out some of the best travel advice on the internet. In 2015, Helene, a proud Texas native, quit her corporate job to travel the world full-time, making a living through content creation. In 2016, Helene, her husband Michael, and their 2 dogs, Hugo and Millie, moved to Germany for 3 years. In 2019, they moved back to the United States, bought an RV, and continued to travel. Now they are back in Europe for a second time living in the UK. Helene's life and work has been featured in Business Insider, Travel and Leisure, Newsweek, The Daily Mail, Thought Catalog, and many others. And on April 9th, Helene's brand new book, 2 O'Clock on a Tuesday at Trevi Fountain, A Search for an Unconventional Life Abroad, hits bookstores everywhere. For reference, y'all, I have been following Helene since the beginning, I'm pretty sure. I think I started following you in 2017 when you first moved to Germany. And it's so surreal to have you on my show.
It's amazing because we have been chatting and talking for so long, and it's so cool to actually meet in person and chat and be able to have these conversations.
I do have to ask you the preliminary question to make sure that you're qualified to be on my show. And if you get it wrong, you have to leave.
I hope I don't get it wrong.
You have to go back to the UK. Go back to where you came from. The question is, do you know what you're doing?
No, I've never known what I've done or what I'm doing, and that is the best part. Not knowing what you're doing actually leads you down the path to the greatest achievements that you never thought possible.
Love that. Love that for you. Okay, you passed, you can stay. So I like to do the little rapid fire round in the beginning just to get to know Helene as a person, outside of Helene in Between. First question is, where did you grow up?
So I am a born and raised Texan, Dallas, Texas, so not the cowboy boot kind of Texan. But I grew up in Dallas and really thought I would live my entire life in Dallas. It was a great place to grow up. Had 2 parents, 2 sisters, and it was great. And met my husband too in Dallas as well.
In high school, right?
Yes, Michael and I met in high school. So I grew up Catholic, as did he. I went to the all-girls Catholic school. He went to the all-boys Catholic school, and we met at a mutual friend's party one night. And for me, it was pretty quickly love at first sight.
Yeah.
I know, Erin, you met your husband in high school.
Who's also named Michael.
Which is weird and amazing.
It's so weird.
I think Michael high school sweethearts end up being really good catches.
Solid guys.
Solid guys. Because there are a lot of terrible men out there, and I feel very, very lucky.
How long have y'all been together?
20 years this November.
No.
Yes. So long.
20 years.
2004. We started dating.
Girl, I was in 4th grade.
I am a little bit older than you. Only slightly.
I don't feel like that. Oh my gosh.
No, I am older than you, but we did start dating in 2004.
Wow.
And our first official date was the homecoming dance. So the big mums, the Texan mums where you wear I'm short. Erin and I are both short. And my mom went all the way down to the ground. And I still have it to this day because I'm nostalgic as hell. Don't just settle down for someone that you just happen to vibe with or is financially savvy.
Yeah.
They should be there for you.
Yeah.
Of course, we love those things, but they should be there for you and help you go for your dreams.
I think that's beautiful advice. I think you really know when you're a good match for each other is when their dreams become your dreams, and not because their dreams are something that you want, but because you want them to achieve their dreams and their goals because that makes you happy. I think that's beautiful advice. Okay, so when you were growing up, what did your parents do for a living?
So both my parents were journalists, both journalism backgrounds. My dad was an investigative journalist for the Dallas Morning News for 25 years. He won a Pulitzer for his work. So, just
casual Pulitzer.
Yeah, casual Pulitzer.
Wow.
And my mom was editor of Women's Wear Daily, which is now W Magazine.
No.
Both of them then became professors.
Did you go to college, and if so, what did you study?
I went to Southern Methodist University, and if you have a free ride for college, just take it. Just take it. Because I got a free ride.
Wow.
And because my parents were college professors at a private university, I got to go for free. So $60,000 a year at the time, I'm sure it's more now, free, completely free.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. And I am thankful for it because I don't have college debt. And I know that so many people struggle with that. And it's not something that I have to deal with. I also think there's lots of avenues if you don't want to go to college. And what's really interesting about living in Europe is seeing that not everybody does. And I think that's a really different perspective that people don't think about at all. But I did go to university. I studied PR and had absolutely no idea what to do with my life. I switched majors 4 times.
Wow.
And I graduated back in 2009 during the financial crisis. So finding a job was absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Worst time to graduate.
Worst time to graduate. I ended up being so worried about it. I had jobs out throughout college. I was a nanny and I taught a dance camp. And I thought, okay, I'll go into teaching because there was a billboard that says Texas teachers needed now. So I started trying to teach. But a kid cut his hair in my kindergarten class, and I thought, okay,
I'm done. I'm out.
That's not for me.
What was your first job ever? Your first paid job?
My first paid job was working for Dave & Buster's corporate. So the corporate headquarters is in Dallas, and I worked in their special events. So I helped people plan events. I had an idea that I was like going to be event planning, and I thought, okay, that's a good stepping stone. But truly, I was paid almost nothing. I mean, looking back.
Yeah. Do you remember how much?
I believe it was $32,000.
Oh, wow. And this is 2009?
Yes. Yeah. And, working 9 to 5, and there was lots of perks around it. That's why I think they paid employees.
Free Dave & Buster's.
Free Dave & Buster's. Eat, drink, and play for free.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, when I was like 22, I thought, okay, well, if everything goes wrong, at least I can go to Dave & Buster's and get some fried chicken.
Absolutely. And some beer and play some games. I was always confused by Dave & Buster's growing up. I was like, is this a place for adults or children?
It is confusing. It's still confusing to me to this day. I haven't been to Dave & Buster's in quite a while.
Yeah, it's probably a little difficult to go back. And what is your current job title?
I call myself a travel blogger and now an author. Which is really thrilling for me to say.
Yeah.
I do call myself a travel blogger, which I think that title has really morphed because now we have like words like influencer and content creator. And it's interesting because I have been in this industry for so long.
Yeah.
But I do still call myself a travel blogger, and I like that because I do still have a blog as well as my social media, my TikTok and my Instagram. So I like that term, travel blogger.
So now I want to get into this period of your life where you graduate college and that period between when you graduated and when you decided to quit your corporate job. Tell us about that.
I think I was really, really lost and really angry. I had just fallen rock climbing. So my husband worked in corporate wellness. So he has a master's in exercise science, and he was working for this huge Dallas corporation, helping people get healthy by taking them out to do, hikes and walks and indoor rock climbing. And I was dropped 20 feet.
Indoor
climbing?
You dropped 20 feet?
20 feet, broke my ankle and leg.
Oh my gosh.
And honestly, my world was really shattered. At the time, I was working at Dave & Buster's, and I couldn't go to work because I was having blackout episodes. I got pneumonia in the hospital.
Oh, no.
I had to cancel my plans for Europe, plans and trips and weddings I was supposed to go to.
Oh.
And I look at that time, and I think I'm so thankful for it because it was a reset. Because I looked around, and I said, I am commuting 40 minutes every morning to go to work for someone else. I don't care about this job. Am I doing anything that I'm remotely passionate about? No. I have to make a change. And I started very small. I wasn't sure what that meant. But I started with a blog. And the blog was really a way for me to just be creative. It was just writing.
So you just went to like WordPress and you were like blog.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, actually went to really old school Blogger because that was completely free.
Wow.
I didn't want to spend any money. I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
I didn't even tell my husband. I was like,
yeah.
okay, I'm going to do this on the side. And it quickly was an obsession. Yeah. I immediately was like, I get chills right now saying it because it was like, this is for me. this is for me. This is what I'm supposed
You're
to do.
a writer.
I'm a writer.
It came back to you. No matter how much you wanted to push it away, it came back to you.
I felt like, gosh, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. And so I started a blog, and then we ended up taking, a year later, once I was healed, we ended up taking a trip to Europe. And a man in a bar in Amsterdam from Australia said to me, 50 hours a week, that's criminal. And he was telling me, you work 50 hours a week for someone else.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And I was like, I'm losing track. And under the Eiffel Tower later on in the trip, my husband and I were like, we have to move. It doesn't matter what it is.
So he was down too.
Yeah, it was almost unspoken. Okay. It was like, we took this trip and we thought, we've got to do this. So a little bit of background. My parents, college professors, ended up teaching a study abroad program in London when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And Michael, his very first trip abroad, was with us in London.
Wow.
London, July 2005. If that rings any bells, it might, because that's when the London bombing was. We missed the bombing by minutes. So we were on the train when that happened. And I thought, we both were we were 18. It was my first time to really appreciate London and appreciate the fact that my parents taught a study abroad program. And I was worried that we would never want to travel again, but it actually made us want to travel more, because it made us realize that bad things can happen everywhere in this world. You cannot be afraid. You cannot be scared. You've got to go back out. And I think about that now, now living in Europe, traveling different places, you can't let the fear hold you back. And that man in Amsterdam telling me, like, what are you doing with your life, really made me realize, okay, I'm going to take my blog seriously. I'm going to give it all I have. And I did. I woke up early and stayed up late, and I was still working. I was maybe not working quite as hard as I should have, because I was working on the blog, but I was definitely...
You're quiet quitting.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what the kids are calling it these days. I love how you took these baby steps. You had that wake up call when you broke your leg, and then you did this trip to Europe, and then you had the London bombing even before that.
Like, I've got a taste of Europe. I got a taste of going somewhere different, but it's so different when you're older and you're able to appreciate, and you're doing it on your own, and you're able to just soak it in a different way. And it changed my life. I mean, one trip can change your entire life. So take it.
You got to take a trip. Go on a trip, y'all. Take the PTO. It's part of your compensation. So you get home from that trip. What are you doing?
A light bulb went off, and I thought, okay, I can do this. I can make money. And that's when I really started every single way to make money. I side hustled. I sold ads on the side of my blog for like $4 to like random bloggers. I started cutting off wine bottles to make candles. I was like, well, I'll just sell that on the blog. I sold t-shirts. I was like, let me just figure this out. I'll do whatever. I will do whatever. And then I started realizing that I didn't need to just do these things randomly. It was good practice, like, not mad about it. But I realized that I could use my experience and what I was learning to actually monetize.
And then you kind of start your blog a little bit on the side, like while you're working this corporate job. And then you get another corporate job, right?
Yes. So I did hop around from there. So I worked for Dave & Buster's for 3 years. And then I did hop around because after that ankle break, I really thought, okay, let me see what else is out there. What else can I do? So I ended up working in SEO was my first job, which was very helpful for my blog. It really, honestly, the first 6 months on the job or training, it was one of the worst corporate environments I've ever been in. A man who was my boss's boss, we would have Friday meetings, and I remember I would sneak my laptop. You weren't supposed to be on your laptop. I would sneak my laptop into blog, and he would always end the meetings with like, I love you guys. And my skin would crawl because he just didn't even know my name.
Ew.
And
Ew.
It just very gross. And then I went from that to a much worse job.
No.
So I worked for, I did the social media for a bunch of different food trucks.
Did the blog help you get these jobs?
Yes, I think so. Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes, because they saw that I could do other things.
So you would talk about your blog in your interview?
Absolutely. My blog was on my resume at the top. Mm-hmm. So yes, my blog absolutely helped me.
Okay.
And then the next job for sure. So I worked in social media for different food trucks, kind of doing the different branding for them. I thought it was just perfect. It was one of the first jobs that I could be remote, which I thought was incredible.
Wow.
Work from home.
Even back then, y'all.
Even back then, which was incredible to me. And I realized quickly it was very toxic, extraordinarily toxic.
Tell us about how it was toxic.
You should wear more makeup. You should wear tighter clothing when you come out to the food trucks.
What?
Yes.
Ew.
My boss's girlfriend would come into meetings. The meetings would be 4, 5, 6, 7 hours without telling us. I never remember being like, I know this is unhealthy. I know this is wrong, but I don't know what to do.
Don't know what to do about it.
I don't know what to do. And I was one of the only women.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Except for the girlfriend that would come in bringing Wendy's. I will never forget this. This really did happen. She brought my boss Wendy's, sat down on his lap, and fed him fries dipped in a Frosty.
Okay, that is really good though.
During the meeting.
That is so inappropriate.
I just sat there in shock because how is this okay? What about this do you think is okay?
So tell me about quitting this job. How'd you quit?
So I think that this is what was interesting. I was so desperate that I wanted to get out of there. So I started selling my t-shirts. And I started selling t-shirts on the blog. My first shirt was "Wine Not." I hold that I came up with that. Because very shortly after, Essie Nail Polish, which I'm wearing today, came out with "Why Not?" And I thought,
where's that
I don't
commission?
know. I hashtagged "Why Not" on my Instagram. If you scroll all the way back, that's the first post.
All right, guys, pay up. All you.
So, but that
Target
shirt,
brands.
that shirt went really well. And then I also made some other shirts that said like "Texas Forever."
Wow.
So graphic t-shirts. This was when graphic t-shirts, everyone was wearing a graphic
I can tell what year this is. Food trucks, graphic t-shirts, SEO.
Exactly. That you are right.
Yeah. Very
but
millennial.
They were selling, and they were selling really, really well. Enough money for me to quit my job.
Wow.
Yes.
That's so cool.
It was awesome, and I tried.
Yeah.
But it did fail. And I realized like I was just spending so much time packaging shirts.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Personally, like I was personally packaging the shirts and going to the mail office and dropping them off and doing all this stuff. And I realized, you know what, this is actually taking me time away from my blog to the point where the next shirt design that I came out with bombed, and the next one after that.
Yeah.
And so I did go back to work.
It's a really good lesson though. Oh, you did go back to work.
I did. I went one more time.
One more time back to the corporate world.
One more time. And I worked at a huge company.
Yeah.
Very, very prominent company where I helped Fortune 500 companies with their social media.
Wow.
That changed my life because I realized that I was helping Fortune 500 companies, and why don't I just help people like me? There's so many people out there trying to grow their Instagram. So this is when Instagram was changing lives. Yeah. And I was helping Fortune 500 companies, and I thought, why am I doing this for these companies? So the problem was they wouldn't even open my emails. So they were paying to have me teach them social media and wouldn't even open my emails. We had to have incentives to get people to open my emails. And so I took that knowledge and I created a course. And it was called Instagram for Success. This was back in 2015.
Before the courses had just
before anyone had an
taken
Instagram,
over the internet.
Before anyone had an Instagram course. I didn't know. The only reason why I knew what I was doing was I too took a course, which I always recommend people, if you have something you're passionate about, take a digital online course.
You can learn anything on the internet,
You
y'all.
really can.
Yeah.
And so I took a course called Webinar Rockstar, which taught me how to do a webinar.
Wow.
And I made $7,000 in one day. And I thought,
cracked the code.
okay. And I still offer this course today. I only offer it once a year. But I have.
Oh yeah, you do.
I only offer it once a year because I actually dedicate like time and energy like to you. And I have over 3,000 students in that course.
Wow.
And it's really been cool.
And you said that some of them have grown to be bigger than you.
Absolutely. There are people with literally millions and millions of followers, and I love it. It's awesome. Just to back up a bit. So basically, my husband and I, we take this trip. We're like, let's move abroad. I finally get this more remote job. The last job I had was fully remote. No one worked at an office. And we thought, okay, I can move abroad with that job because they did have a few employees in Europe. So we thought, okay, I can move abroad with that job. So we knew we were going to move in 1 year. So we moved to Nashville because I wanted to make sure that I could leave Dallas because I've never lived in anywhere but Dallas. I even went to school in Dallas.
Yeah.
So I was really...
That's a really good idea.
It was awesome.
Also, Nashville's great.
Nashville's awesome. Yeah. It was great. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my business and how to run my business not in Dallas, which sounds weird, but at the time I only lived in Dallas, you know? So we had bought our house in Dallas, we rented it out, and we lived very frugally, and we had saved a bunch of money, bought a house, and basically just lived very frugally. And so we saved up $45,000 over the past 3 years to make this move abroad. If all else was going to fail, we would have that $45K cushion. So we moved to Nashville, and 3 months into moving to Nashville, I go full time with the blog after I sell this course. And it was kind of risky. It wasn't kind of risky. It was risky. But it felt right. It felt right immediately, and I haven't looked back since. So 2015 is when I've been doing this, and it's been the best job I've ever had.
Best job ever. Okay, so you decided to move to Germany, Heidelberg, Germany.
Yeah.
Without ever stepping foot in Germany.
Yes.
Before.
So it's funny because once you start making radical changes, you realize that it's not as scary as you think.
The more like risks you take, the higher your tolerance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that I'm an extraordinarily fearful person. Truly, I really am. I would actually call myself a homebody. A homebody that literally has moved abroad and is a travel blogger. But I'm afraid. I don't like making bad decisions. I don't like disappointing people, particularly my husband and my parents and my friends. And I don't want to make a mistake. I'm terrified of making mistakes. So we had to choose Nashville. And we made that choice. And I realized, oh, if all else fails, I can go back.
Yeah.
I can change.
You can always go home.
And in moving, I found out different things about myself. You can change who you are. You can change how you present yourself. You can talk differently if you wanted to. I didn't change those things, but I did realize that I could make changes, and it didn't have to be that I would lose myself. And so we spent the year in Nashville eating a lot of good food and going to a lot of good music venues.
Yeah.
And on every Thursday and Sunday for an entire year, we researched where to live in Germany. So we picked Germany first. We made an Excel spreadsheet. I did not make that sheet.
Yeah,
My
let's
husband,
talk
Michael.
about Michael and his research skills.
It's incredible to witness. It's also annoying, but
Her husband makes spreadsheets for everything,
for everything.
and he's calculated
He's very calculated. So he is obsessed with saving money in a great way.
in a good way. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we're comfortable now, but he does not like to overspend, and it makes for a nice life because I'm not worried about him overspending financially. But basically, he made this Excel sheet of places to live. We did all this research. What are the happiest places? What are financially safe places? You know, some things that were really important to us is centrally located in Europe, is beautiful, which I know is subjective. It should be. Beauty is subjective. You know, people all the time, why would you live in Germany? Well, maybe that's not the place for you. Why didn't you pick Spain? Great. You know, every single person should actually make an Excel spreadsheet or make a list of what they want out of a place. So basically we made a list. I want it to be pretty. I want it to be centrally located. I want them to have a good economy, and I want to be able to travel easily.
And be like visa friendly,
Yes.
right? That was
Yes.
another thing.
Another
Immigration.
thing, visa friendly.
Yeah.
Great point. And all of those really landed us on Germany.
Beautiful. I love that. So I want to talk about how you moved with your dogs. That is something that has always held me back. I'm like, I can't move with my dog. I'd have to put her in cargo. I'm never going to put her in cargo. Tell everybody about how you moved abroad. By the way, Helene doesn't just have 2 little Bichons. She has 2 big dogs.
I have 2 big dogs. One is a Doberman, and the other one is an English Springer Spaniel. And a Doberman's quite large.
Yeah.
So with Hugo and Millie, they are bigger dogs. There was no question that they were coming. They were coming. They're part of my family. They're my responsibility. I love them. They bring me so much joy. I wanted to move with them, and I wanted them to experience Europe and get to go somewhere new. Mm-hmm. They've been to 16 countries.
Wow.
They're well traveled.
That's more than most people.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But it was difficult. You know, I'm not going to say it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. There is paperwork, but it isn't like it's not doable. You can do it. So basically what you have to do is you have to go to a vet, and it has to be an accredited vet. You got to get them checked out. And then there really are a couple of options. You can go the really, really extremely expensive option, which is this K9 Jets, which is newer. It's like $25,000. We're not going to do that. Wow. It's expensive.
To go to all the way to Europe.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You can do cargo, which we have done. Mm-hmm. And I have older dogs. Mm-hmm. It's fine.
Okay.
And it's I think, if anything, dogs feed off of your energy.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I know that. And I know I was nervous, but I decided to be calm. And
it's all going to be okay.
It's going to be fine. And so we spent, the few days leading up to that, we made sure we took them on a number of hikes. So they're really
tired.
They're tired.
Yeah.
They're feeling good. You can't give them anything. You don't want to give them any sedatives or anything like that. No air tags. They have their food and their water, and that's that. And my dogs are older, and they were fine. They were okay. And the other way, which is maybe the most fun, is you can take the Cunard, or Canard if you want to be British, Queen Mary 2, which is a boat. And it's 7 days. It is the Titanic boat. It is the actual ship. It looks like it. It looks like you're stepping back in time. It's amazing. It's beautiful. People dress up. So it's a 7-day cruise ship, and you take it from New York to Southampton.
I've seen it leaving. Yeah. And I pointed out, I was like, that's the boat Helene took with her dogs.
And it's so fun. It's honestly amazing. You get to see your dogs whenever. They had more fun than me.
Whenever?
So not whenever, but there are designated times throughout the day. I mean, you could probably spend up to 6 hours with them during the day. So you can see them often. And they have the outdoors. Millie, who is an English Springer Spaniel, who is the most English dog you will ever see.
Yeah.
Her ears are just flapping the wind. She's just having the best
She's
time.
living it.
There's birds up in the air. I mean, just absolutely loving it. They could not have had more fun.
Wow.
And it's a great environment. I mean, there's other dogs in there. It's incredible. It's one of the most incredible
experiences. I'm
experiences.
definitely doing the Queen Mary.
It's so fun, and it's no stress. It's really no stress.
And how much was that whole journey?
So it's actually not as bad as you think. In my opinion, it's for the dogs. You're going to pay about $1,000 per dog.
Oh my gosh!
Which, honestly,
that's
if
really
you think
good.
about
7 days,
exactly, and you think about how much it is to ship dogs and how much.
Oh my gosh!
That and
it's
that stress
for
and
them.
that stress. Yes,
Wow.
It's no stress. It really is. Like, you go on. It could not be more convenient and easy. And then you get to be on a luxury cruise ship for 7 days with all you can eat and drink.
Wow.
We had the English ballet on board with us when we were there. So people were on the ship just to be on the ship to watch the ballet performances. So it's just incredible.
Gosh. How are you currently monetizing your blog and social media?
So it's really morphed over the years. And that's one thing about this industry that you have to understand is that it's going to change. When I started, it was mostly through my blog. And now it's not. It's mostly through TikTok and Instagram and my newsletter. So really, it started off with the blog mostly, and selling my own courses and content. And then it morphed into working with brands.
And what does your team look like now? Is it just you and Michael?
It is still just Michael and I. Basically, how we started working together was really interesting. So we had just moved to Germany. Michael had quit his job.
Okay.
And I hired someone because I needed help.
Yeah.
And he was working for this company called Wonder, where you answer questions, researched questions, which he thought perfect. And he would spend 5 or 6 hours and get $17 on these questions. So it was not worth it. So, and the girl that I hired kept asking me why I wasn't posting her on social media. And I thought, I'm not, like, this isn't for you. I need help. And she just wasn't the best, and, it wasn't the right fit. And so I said, hey, can you help me? And so we started working together. And the idea was, if anything goes wrong, like, our relationship comes first. And we had to work through it, absolutely. But now, we've been working together since 2017.
I feel like you guys, he's more detail oriented, and you're more of like the visionary and the writer and the creative. So I think you guys naturally work very well together. Something else you've been very open about is being child free by choice on Instagram. Can you tell us maybe something people don't understand about that?
Yeah, it is interesting. Growing up, I grew up Catholic. Michael grew up Catholic, and the expectation is that you're going to have kids.
Lots and lots of kids.
Lots and lots of kids. And particularly on Michael's side of the family, they're staunch Catholics. My family is a little bit more open-minded, but everyone I know has 2 kids. Everyone. Most now they're on their 3rd. And it always felt like the choice that I had to make. And as soon as I started making these choices that I wanted to make, it opened up my mind to the fact that I didn't have to make choices other people made. That really was what spawned it. When I realized that I could do work that I was passionate about that would make me quadruple what I ever made ever in corporate America to work for myself and love what I do, or to move abroad, I realized I did not have to make a choice based on what other people or society's expectations of me. We really did say, you know, we can change our minds. We can still change our minds, but I don't think we will. And I am comfortable with that. And being different does not mean you have to lose yourself or lose your family or lose your friends or any part of yourself. And truly, in my community, that was a hard pill to swallow. Yeah. You know, not having kids is not normal in my world. So being comfortable with not being normal is okay. Moving abroad, all of these things kind of led up to the realization that you can be different while also being yourself.
Yeah, unconventional. Yeah, I always wonder if, like, you know, most people have kids, the vast, vast majority, but I always wonder if it was like more 50-50. Like if it was almost like getting a dog. It's like, yeah, some people get a dog, some people don't. If everybody would still make the decision to have kids, or if it's just osmosis or the natural instinct.
I could not agree more with that. Yeah. I often think that whatever we do in life, whether it's kids or where we live or what we do, I think we don't ask ourselves enough questions, especially women. I don't think we ask ourselves, because we're so busy, because we have so much going on.
Backed into corners.
Exactly. Do we sit back and say, is this actually what I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
Because it's not, you should change.
Yeah.
You should change it. And is that going to be easy? No. Is it going to happen overnight? Probably not. But if you're unhappy, you don't have to keep going down this path. And you don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
You know, something I notice a lot too, and like I do want kids, I do want a family, but something that, and I've thought really hard about it, but something that I've noticed is a lot of people want babies, or they want perfect children. And I'm like, that is not what you're signing up for.
No.
You are signing up to bring a human into this world, and they might have issues that are out of either of your control that they're born with, or they could not like you.
Yes.
Or they could grow up to be nothing like you.
Yes.
And they're going to be a fully functioning adult with their own life and their own decisions. And I think people need to like really, really take that to heart.
Yes.
Before having kids, because they're not a pet. They're different than a pet.
But I think we should think of these things through. I think we should think, if we're going to get a pet, we should think that through. They're going to be with you for 10, 15 years.
Hopefully 20 years.
Hopefully 20 years.
Forever.
And I think a lot of times we do things because other people are doing them, or we haven't really thought it through. And I love kids. I love my friends that have kids. I'm very, very close with them. I think it's an incredibly selfless and wonderful thing to do. It truly is. I think it's the most selfless thing you can do. And I think it is an experience that I know that I won't have. But at the end of the day, I know that the other experiences that I want to have are a little bit different, and that's okay.
And that's okay. I love that for you. I think you're giving a lot of women space to talk about that and think about that. And it's something that's scary to do. And I think you got to be brave to talk about on the internet when there are a lot of people who probably DM you and they're like saying the most awful things to you. I mean, she posts them on her story. The comments
they are pretty funny.
They're hilarious, but they're also kind of sad. It's like, why are you so defensive about it?
Yeah.
Like, why do you care so much about somebody else's life decision?
Right.
So thank you for sharing about that. And that's a good segue actually into like the whole wanting to do something but not thinking it through all the way into moving abroad. You know, there's this kind of movement right now, and I've definitely felt it, at least for me. I don't know if this is true for you, but I really felt it ramp up in conjunction with TikTok in 2020. A lot of people talking about how, like, I'm done living in the U.S. The U.S. is a third world country in a Gucci belt. What do you think about this?
It's interesting because on TikTok especially, I think a lot of people that have moved abroad want to and have grown their accounts by saying, I left the U.S., which is a dumpster fire, to live in this utopia that is Europe. And there's no perfect place. There will never be. And if you're stressed or unhappy, you can still be stressed and unhappy anywhere in the world. And what I love so much about traveling is appreciating every single place I've ever been. I actually don't, except for Luxembourg.
Except for Luxembourg. She doesn't like Luxembourg.
It's kind of a joke, but truly every place
it's an inside joke.
It's an inside joke.
You have lots of inside jokes for your followers. It's another great thing. Yeah.
But truly every single place that I've ever been, I love. I mean, I'm serious. Every place I've been has something. And I think that the idea that the US is terrible, I understand there are absolutely problems here, but there are problems in Europe too. There absolutely are. And I think what's really interesting is we can never escape ourselves. So you moving abroad does not mean that you're going to escape all your problems and troubles and issues. And there are things that are tough about living in Europe. There are things that are tough about living in America. And isn't it beautiful that we can actually learn from each other, as I think we should?
I think we should too.
There are so many... Absolutely, there are incredible benefits in Europe.
Yeah.
And there are some really great things about living in the U.S. And that's undeniable. And the fact that we want to make it black and white and say this is the right way to live is doing a disservice to the fact that how privileged are we truly that we grow up in America and then we say, oh, this is terrible, I want to move abroad. And you can.
People don't get that that's a huge privilege that Americans,
this is a huge privilege.
And
it's honestly crazy to me. Other people would love to leave where they're from. And because we are from the U.S., we can, which is crazy.
Yeah. So I've never lived abroad. Besides for 4 months, I lived in Scotland. So I studied abroad in Scotland, but I took it really seriously. So I actually withdrew from my school, enrolled in a school in Scotland, and I was there during the 2014 referendum, which was when Scotland was trying to leave the UK. And I took that opportunity I surrounded myself with Scottish people, and I tried to talk to as many people as possible, and actually made a little documentary that never came out about it. So I talked to people from both sides of the spectrum. Which, mind you, Scotland's population is smaller than New York City's population. So it's a small country. So it was pretty easy for me to talk to people from all sides of the aisle or the spectrum. And I got to learn a lot about Scotland, but I learned even more about the United States, I think, living abroad. And I'm wondering if you feel the same.
I love that. That is, first of all, that's amazing and very cool that you took that approach. And I think that more people should. And I could not agree more. Mm-hmm. Because people approach you freely with what they think of you as a country or as a population, or even from New York or Texas. They're going to come to you and say, this is what I think. Is this true? And it's really interesting because their media is different from our media, so they're able to they're presented one picture and we're able to discuss that. And I think I learned so much.
Yeah.
I remember going to London during the Bush administration, and people were like, well, why is he in office?
Yeah.
I was 15.
Can we talk about that specifically? Because I remember, living in the UK, and people were talking to me about the election and the local politics. They knew more than I did.
Yes.
And I was like, can I just ask, why do you guys care so much about the U.S.? You're constantly talking about the U.S., but you don't live there. And I remember distinctly somebody saying to me, because it matters.
It matters.
They were like, who the U.S. elects affects me.
It does.
And you can say the U.S. is in the center of the world all you want, but in that moment, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
The U.S. impacts the rest of the world in ways I didn't even know.
It does. It does. And I think there are pros and cons to that. There are pros because obviously it's interesting that they are interested in that. And I think the cons are when we make mistakes, they're on a global level.
Oh my gosh.
And it's it looks bad.
We're under a microscope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
for good reason.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of responsibility in that. Mm-hmm. And kind of when people are asking you questions, it is important that we do think through what we're doing and how we're carrying out our politics here, because it does affect other people, which is so crazy to think about. And I do remember, in London when I was 14, someone asked me oh, do you ride a horse to work? And I was like, I've been on a horse.
Oh, because you're from Texas?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
funny.
I
think, it's really interesting how I enjoy seeing, I'm not offended at all ever, how people see us, because I think it helps me understand how to carry myself over in Europe. I am not going to be as loud. I am more mindful of that. And I think, it's important to think about how you carry yourself. But I definitely think that it is really interesting that people do care. And it's really gratifying when you can have a conversation about that. And I think one of the best parts about living in Europe was getting to see what people think of us, and also what I think of the way they run their society.
I think that's an earthquake. I'm not even kidding. I mean, it could be a truck.
Oh my God.
It could be a truck. Oh, I think it was just a truck.
We could pretend it's an earthquake.
That totally felt like an earthquake.
Yeah, it was really.
That was like a back and forth. Well, there's always an adventure with Helene. I guess we'll see on Twitter later or whatever it's called now. Yeah, that was an earthquake. Apparently.
My first earthquake.
We just went out in the common area and everybody's like, was that an earthquake?
That was crazy.
That was your first earthquake?
That was my first.
And with me.
So cheers.
Cheers. Earthquake buds. Okay, well, that was exciting.
That was very exciting.
That was exciting. Bringing it back from the earthquake. I make videos about rights and advocacy. And obviously when you make videos about the lack of maternity leave policies here and like lack of paid family leave and obviously our total dumpster fire of a healthcare system, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, we can all agree that our healthcare system does not function correctly.
Right.
And we spend more per capita than any European country on healthcare, and yet most of us don't receive government healthcare. And that's actually another thing that I see a lot of Europeans will comment, like, how do Americans not have healthcare? And I'm like, oh, no. We have robust, free, quote unquote, free healthcare here. It's just not for the middle class, which is, or the upper class, like poor people, sick people, disabled people. I guess what would be your advice for anybody thinking, I want to move, I'm done living in the US, I want to move to Europe?
I think to address the healthcare, what's really interesting is I broke my ankle and leg in the US, and then I turned around, moved to Germany, and in 2018, I tore my ACL in Austria and had surgery in Germany. So I've had the benefit of having leg surgeries in 2 different continents and 2 different countries and been able to really be able to compare. And what is really interesting, and I think what people don't know, is I do think there is more opportunity to feel comfortable getting healthcare in Germany. That's my experience. I've lived in Germany. I'm not going to talk about every single place. I bring up healthcare a lot wherever I go because it is interesting.
So interesting to me.
And one thing I think that people don't understand is taxes are much higher in Europe. So you might not feel like you're paying for your healthcare, but you are paying more in taxes, and that typically does go to your healthcare. And I think that the idea in America, although I agree, I don't think it's working, is you should save up your money to then, if you need healthcare, you have the funds to pay for it. But that's such an unknown, and the prices can vary extraordinarily. It was $14,000 out of pocket for me. I had to pay $7,000 out of pocket. That happened in September. So the very next year, my $7,000 out of pocket again. So $14,000. It was, that's detrimental. That's detrimental and that's scary. Whereas I can look at Germany and I tore my ACL and I had insurance there. And then similarly, I'm finding in many different places across Europe, you can pay a little bit more to have different services, right? So it's like you have these baseline services and then you can pay a little bit more for more. Now, something to think about is most people don't pay a little bit more. So most people go with the baseline services, which are still good. For instance, they said to me, do you want our secondary doctor to do your leg surgery or the primary? And I said, the primary. That was going to cost another 1,000 euros. Okay. So not an astronomical price, but it is enough to where not everyone is going to take that. So healthcare wise, I think that there's so much misinformation as far as Europe.
And there's a lot of just like simplifying it. Like they get free healthcare.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, guys, it's a little more nuanced.
Yeah, it is. But I do think that we can learn from them.
I do too.
And we can learn what is working and what's not. And why wouldn't we apply that to us? And I think that that goes across the board for everything. Yes. And I think that, maternity leave, the maternity leave in the U.S. is nonsensical. It's not fair.
It doesn't exist.
It's not fair.
There's no mandatory maternity leave. And I've gone down, research rabbit holes about this. What's interesting is that we're the only developed country in the world without a federal mandatory maternity leave policy. That's something else a lot of Europeans in my comments, or international people in my comments, don't understand. The United States is states. It's 50 like little countries, and each kind of state or country has its own unique laws and policies. Right. So just because we don't have a federal law, because federal laws are very extreme, that's every state has to do this. New York does have like paid maternity leave and family leave like policies. But yes, we don't have that federal maternity leave policy. However, like some countries, like all the people from like Eastern European countries be like, oh, I was on maternity leave for three years.
Germany's
like that too?
So basically it's protected. So, I mean, I had friends that had 2 children and they went to Australia for 6 years because she had 3. She had one 3 years, another one 3 years. So you're not paid 100%.
Yeah, you're not paid. That's another thing. You can be paid like 50% of your salary.
Yeah. So I believe it was 1 year though, was a full 100%. And it does vary from country to country.
Yeah.
You know, Croatia is different. Mm-hmm. They even have paternity leave. So we just visited friends in Croatia that just had their second child, and she was on maternity leave, and then he was about to switch for his paternity leave.
Oh my gosh. So my question is, and I've actually spoken to some of my followers like directly, which back and forth, you know, I was just talking to a woman in Romania who had a baby 2 years, I think it was 50% pay, or it depended on what she paid into before, which is another thing. In some countries, you have to pay into the system for years. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially just actually getting your money back when you have a kid, which I think is a really cool system. If you're looking to hire somebody, I don't want to pay somebody who's not working for years.
Right.
So my question is, how does that not crush companies? You know,
I think what's really interesting is they are set up for this. So the government is going to be able to help them when people go on maternity leave.
So it's like,
so it is government subsidized. And this is for not every single country, but you know, they are getting help from the government. And I agree. You look at that and you think, okay, well, how can they possibly survive that? Mm-hmm. But I think that there is practice in place for things like maternity leave. They have longer holidays. They have longer vacation time. They have more PTO. So I think they're more used to people taking time off, and therefore have policies that surround that.
Yeah. That's something that I noticed in Scotland. I mean, I learned so much from the UK system, and I know the NHS, which is the UK's healthcare system, has issues, but I just think it's fascinating how they do so much preventative care there. Yeah. Because that's a lot of why Americans get crushed, is because we're like, well, I can't afford to get a colonoscopy. And then you find out you've stage 4 colon cancer. Yes. And then it's way more expensive than it would have been if you found it at stage 1. So that's one thing that I've really loved about the UK. And then another is how the government kind of works with companies to subsidize some of these things.
Which should be. We should help companies that have to ensure that their employees want to keep working there.
At least small businesses or medium-sized businesses, like Walmart, you're on your own.
So many different European countries have more of these policies in place, and their businesses are still running. So you have to look at that and think, okay, well, that's still working for them.
Yeah, we don't have to give it all up.
Right.
So that's really fascinating to me. And I really appreciate, like you said, there are a lot of content creators out there who have blown up because of their provocative videos or controversial hot takes.
I think it's been interesting because I think so often on social media, people want you to take a side. And if you're not taking a side, then you're not having an opinion. I do have an opinion. I just think there's good and bad to both. And I really think there is this whole thing, like, I just saw a TikTok video the other day. This girl's like, I moved to Italy and, you know, everything's better and life is perfect. And maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But as someone that absolutely loves Italy, and my book is called 2 o'clock on a Tuesday at Trevi Fountain, you cannot tell me there's not bureaucracy and issues with getting your internet set up and just waiting for months and months at the office trying to get your visa approved. And I dealt with similar things in Germany. I mean, our visa got denied 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
And I talk about that a lot in my book.
Well, that's another thing people need to consider is like immigration. Like, yes, these countries might have it all figured out. They might be perfect. It's because they're exclusionary. Yeah. They don't let certain people into their country who they think are going to bring it down.
Yeah.
And that's something people got to reckon with.
Right. And there's a process. You know, everywhere, every single country you want to go to, there's a process. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go. Absolutely go. If you have any interest in moving abroad, my response is do it, because it has changed my life so in such a huge way. Yeah. But I definitely think about your reasons for wanting to move and really try to find a place that will fit that box, but know that no place is perfect. No place is utopia. And something that I really love, my favorite thing truly about living abroad is the lessons that I've learned, the history that I've learned. I feel like the past 8 years of my life has been almost like school in the most beautiful way I can possibly say that. It's very important for me. The reason why I love Europe so much is I feel so connected to so many different places.
Yeah.
And because I love, and I get in trouble a lot because I'll talk about American things that Europeans think are weird, or America versus Europe.
My favorite series. And I love that series.
It gets heated because the number one thing people say is Europe is not a country. I know that.
Oh, yeah. You don't think she knows that?
My favorite thing about Europe in the world, my favorite thing hands down, is that you go and everything is different. You go 30 minutes north and it's different. You know, I lived in Heidelberg, so that was 45 minutes to France.
Wow.
45 minutes, someone speaking a different language. That is mind-boggling.
And that's another thing that bothers me is when, like, again, no offense, Europeans, but sometimes some of y'all rag on Americans for only speaking English. It's because we don't need to.
330 million people here.
We're a massive country.
Huge.
You can start in Texas, drive 12 hours, and still be in Texas.
Yeah.
And I once saw I think it was an Italian exchange student. They came to the U.S. They posted a TikTok, and they were like, "I don't think you guys realize, like,
it's huge.
Americans don't travel because their whole country is the size of like Europe, basically."
Yeah, exactly.
How have you been treated as an American? Maybe when you were living in Germany.
Yeah.
What was your experience?
I could not say better things. I have been treated extremely kindly. I have had only wonderful experiences. I have made lots of friends. I think that I do hear that people have worries and concerns. You know, I think that there are going to be bad eggs that ruin it for all countries worldwide, that make people look stupid. But for the most
America
part, for
included.
me, yes.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, we do come across sometimes as stupid or not knowing geography. And
That's another thing.
Let's combat that. Like, you know, let's make sure you do know your geography.
Yeah.
Like, study it up. If that bothers you, study it.
Yeah, prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that travel has really opened my mind to learning more about places. I feel like every time I travel somewhere new, I learn. And I think that, yeah, I've had really good experiences. Has it been perfect? No. Not everyone's going to like you all of the time. I've had bad experiences in the U.S. too.
Exactly.
So every place has good and bad.
Yeah.
But the majority I found, the truth is that we are all just people trying to make it on this earth, trying to put food on the table, and at the end of the day, just want to be happy.
Yeah.
So that's universal.
Yeah.
And if we can realize that, we can understand that not one person is better than another, not one place is either.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So your advice, if anybody's thinking about leaving the U.S. and moving to Europe, is just first look inward and
Yes.
look at what they want.
Look inward. Think about what you actually want out of a place to live. Think about what are your desires and why are you wanting to move there. If you're wanting to move to Spain just for the weather, well, it can get cold in Spain too. You know, there's, don't just think of it romantically, because I think we often do that. I know that I can be, the great thing about my husband is we kind of balance each other out. I can often be, my head is in the clouds, rose-colored glasses on. And if I had done that, then I might have just moved to Paris. And I love Paris. Please don't get me wrong. But I am so glad that we lived in Germany.
Yeah.
And I really kind of got a world experience that I would never would have gotten before.
I'm curious. So I hear a lot of Americans talk about moving to the Scandinavian countries.
Yes.
You know, Finland, Sweden, Norway.
The happiest. They keep winning the awards for happiness.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's a study that shows you get happier the closer you get to the poles. So like, anyway, colder people are happier. Different conversation. But I'm curious, did you guys look into Denmark or Sweden?
Absolutely, we did. The reason why we didn't ultimately pick that is because I know myself, and I know that I don't like it when it's dark in the winter for almost the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, who
and
knows?
I completely understand that it is absolutely wonderful, beautiful, but personally, I think I would struggle with that, just the darkness in the wintertime. And honestly, that was one of the main things. Also, cost of living is higher there. So it is more expensive to live there. And rightly so. You know, it's very, their public transport's great. It's very, very clean. It's beautiful. You know, I spent a lot of time in Scandinavia. I was recently in Chamonix, France, and met a Finnish guy. And I asked him point blank, why do you think you're happier? And he said, it's because we're trusting. And I think
Wow.
that's really interesting.
That's
but one
cool.
thing that people don't think about is it's really small. So you have a place that is, I'm from Dallas, which is, 8 million people.
Yeah.
New York's even larger.
Yeah.
And truly, Finland's smaller than that. So you have a community. It's easier to have a community. And I think there's benefits to that. And so if that's, if you're really going after a place for happiness, check out places that are maybe smaller.
I mean, Iceland's like that too. It has
Exactly.
I don't even think Iceland has 500,000 people.
I believe it's 330,000. I think you're right.
One of the tiniest countries and one of the happiest. And I think there is a correlation there. The United States is so big.
It's so big.
You really can't compare it to smaller countries, because I think something that's cool about smaller countries and smaller communities in general is that people can't fall through the cracks as easily.
Yes.
Which I think is an issue with these bigger.
Love that.
Yeah.
That is so well said. A study just recently came out with the UK that is the second most unhappy place.
Come on, you Brits.
There's no way that you've got to take these reports with a grain of salt, because I have never experienced kinder people in my life.
Yeah.
I'm truly shocked.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
the best part about living in the UK
Yeah.
is the people. I mean, just the kindest people I've ever come across, shockingly
Yeah.
so. And I'm from Texas, where I feel like, we're like, hey,
everybody's
y'all.
so nice in Texas.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm going to Texas next week. I
Oh.
can't wait.
I'm excited. Where are you going?
I'm going to San Antonio, and then I'm driving up to the Panhandle where my grandma lives.
Fun.
Yeah.
That'll be really fun.
I'm driving a full 9 hours in the same state of Texas.
You'd be through 9 countries. Yeah.
I know, right? It's interesting too. Talking about the happiness, there's always those lists of 10 happiest countries in the world, and it is self-reported, obviously, but Iceland is on that list. And I think it's so interesting because Iceland also has the highest people on depression medication, like per capita.
Wow.
And there's a really interesting show that Dwight from The Office, Rainn Wilson, made. I think it's on NBC Peacock.
I need to watch that.
And he goes to the 2 happiest countries and the 2 unhappiest countries in the world, and he just tries to figure out what is it. And it's so interesting because I think a lot of it does come down to self-reporting. And I think Americans, one thing that I learned by living abroad is that Americans are so whiny. Like, in a good way, though.
I agree.
We don't settle for the status quo. Like, if we see a problem, we're like, that's a problem. We need to do something about that.
Yes.
And I've noticed from my travels is that's true elsewhere, but not true everywhere.
Wow, that's so true. And I think there's pros and cons to that. And I know, I can't take us. Here's the reason why.
Pros and cons.
Because we do come out with a lot of innovation. Come on. I'm sorry, but we do. The U.S. comes out with tons of innovation, whether that's tech or health. And I think the reason is maybe, we look around and we think, this could be better. Whereas in Italy, there are potholes and they're like, that's fine.
Like, it's part of the culture.
I mean, the hardest part about living in England, hands down, is driving.
Really?
The driving is hard. You're driving on the left and the roads are tiny. So I live in Oxford, which is
adorable.
They're adorable. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, stunning. But I am right on the border of the Cotswolds. I go to the Cotswolds all the time. I take my dogs out into the Cotswolds because there's just so many beautiful fields and it's pheasant season, so it's just gorgeous. But driving there is always, I'm white knuckling the steering wheel like, oh my God.
Otherwise, what do you think is something that you've really learned about America living abroad?
I had a conversation the other day on the plane. If you sit next to me on a plane, I'm sorry.
You're talking?
I'm talking to you.
I love it.
I love talking to people on planes.
Love it.
You're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you're coming back from something. And of course, if someone has headphones in, I don't talk to them, but
you take them out.
I was heading back from Iceland. We did a whirlwind psychotic trip in which we flew from London to Rome. We were there 14 hours. My husband Michael saw that the activity for Northern Lights was wild. So we flew from Rome to Iceland.
It was like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Rome to try and see Northern Lights. As we were flying in, it was so cloudy, and I was like, "Oh no, we did not see any Northern Lights."
No.
We've tried very hard, but third time's the charm, fourth time's the charm.
Yeah.
On our way back, I was so tired. I mean, we barely slept. But on our way back, I was sitting next to these 2 girls who were doing. They were from the UK. They were from a small island called Isle of Man.
Oh yeah.
And they were taking a trip to Iceland. They had a class trip to Iceland. their geography class.
Oh my gosh.
And
the
I was
opportunities.
wow. I was telling you, my class went to the JFK Museum. Okay.
Hey,
and
that's
then
cool too.
We went to the Alamo. We did go to the Alamo in Austin.
Remember the Alamo.
Remember it. Never forget. And, hey, that I wanted to say, like, that's really cool. They were seniors. So that was year 12 or 13 for their year.
That's so special.
And we were talking about the school system, and we were talking about different things. And I was like, this is amazing. You're getting to do that. And they said, one thing I'll never do is I'll never get to experience American high school. And I thought,
they idealize American high school.
Wow. but we should.
No, I idealize it. The football games, like, it's all true.
It's true. Exactly. It's true. And that's something that was so cool. She was like, oh, the football games and the cheerleaders, and what was that like? And it was like that.
It was magical.
It was. I mean, I saw a TikTok video the other day, like a really nostalgic, like the football team running out onto the field and the sky and fall season. It was great. And I think that what I've learned about America versus Europe, or really anywhere, is you might as well idealize your life. You might as well romanticize it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's you making coffee or whatever, you can make a choice whether you're happy or not. And I know that times get hard and things get stressful and things are terrible. That is life. That's a human experience. But choosing to be happy in the moments that you do have can actually really change your life.
And I think something that can really help people feel happier in the moment, because it's hard, is getting perspective. And I think travel is the best way to get perspective on your life.
Yes.
It's amazing.
I was in Romania a few years ago, and we were doing some travel across Romania, and really hearing a lot about wars and struggles that they had. And the woman leading the tour had not had an orange until she was 16. And I understand that there are problems in the U.S. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to say that this is a third world country,
it's just
it is not fair to. It's a slap in the face to people that have struggled from their countries. And I think that, if you're unhappy, make a change. But, don't forget that there are problems everywhere.
You can love something and criticize it. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. I'm very critical. I made an entire documentary about a terrible thing the U.S. did. I'm very critical, but I'm also extremely grateful.
I think we're on the exact same page.
Yeah. Because I grew up, my parents are very intentional. So we traveled a lot, and I never went to Disney World, but I went to Kenya and Peru and Turkey and all these places. And they would be like, look, this is how other people live. They're really happy. They live differently than you.
Yes.
They have to walk a mile to get clean water. You don't have to do that. You can turn on your faucet. And then I also grew up with people, immigrants and refugees around me. And my parents would help them out. And they would just be like, I'm so jealous that you have an American passport and citizenship. And so from a young age, I've always felt very, very privileged and grateful to be an American. And at the same time, we're better than this.
Yes, absolutely. And that takes forms in many different ways. There are different things that need to change. Lots does. I agree. I think we're kind of at a point where things need to progress and move on. And, living in a different country, it is interesting to look back on the U.S. and able to criticize it in a different way.
Okay. Do you have a favorite quote or guiding saying that you keep in your back pocket?
Yes, it's Shakespeare. And it is, a wise man knows himself to be a fool. A fool thinks himself to be wise. And I think about that almost every day, because it's basically saying we don't know everything. No one does. And a wise person is continually learning and continually shifting and shaping their beliefs. And I had certain beliefs throughout my life, and they've constantly changed, because that is it. We're always going to learn.
I love that. I once heard somebody say you should almost be embarrassed of looking back at yourself 5 years ago because of how much you've grown and changed. And I think allowing people to grow and change too.
Yes. That's absolutely if someone isn't maybe thinking the exact same thing you are.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll learn.
Yeah. Or maybe you can learn from them.
Yes.
Yeah. I keep a tragically open mind.
I like to say that I have strong beliefs, but they're loosely held.
Okay, so the last thing I like to do here Yeah, so I like to co-author a bit of advice.
Yes.
Dear Erin and Helene, I'm torn and don't know what to do. I graduated college with a degree in finance and I'm looking for a good job. The problem is I'm really interested in travel. In college, I studied abroad in Prague and it sparked the travel bug in me. I'm trying to figure out if I should just get a good job now to gain momentum in my career or if I should use the freedom I have to travel. I've saved up around $12,000 living at home with my parents and I've heard of people backpacking through Europe after college. Do you think this would be a good idea for me to use all the money on a backpacking trip? Also, how could I explain to my parents that I would be safe? Or is there a way to do this with a group or someone else? I feel like if I don't try to do this now, I'll forever regret it. Sincerely, Emily from California.
Wow, I love that question because I think a lot of people feel this. They're young and they're trying to figure out what to do with their life. And if you have a drive and passion and you have saved up some money, I think first and foremost, you can spend less than $12,000. $12,000, by the way, is incredible. So congratulations on that. I personally would say to go for it. So often I keep talking to Europeans who are taking gap years and it's transformative. And I think it teaches you about yourself. And I do think the beauty of travel is that it can help you figure out what to do with your life. And if you're struggling with that and you're not sure exactly what job to get, then I would say to take the trip. I think you can spend a lot less than you think. There are so many opportunities. One I would suggest is trusted house sitters, where you stay with someone's pets in exchange for a free stay.
Yeah.
That's what we use for our dogs.
Love that.
Gone right now.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
You use it. Yeah. The reverse. That's
Personally
awesome.
use it. Yeah. So I think that would be my advice. Obviously, if you're just terrified or you have a really good job lined up, you can think about it. But what would you say?
Yeah. Pros and cons list. Think that the most pivotal moments of my life have been while I'm traveling. And I also think traveling alone is actually one of the most empowering things you can do, especially for women. And that
Could not agree more. Please travel solo. It is so transformative.
Yeah, it just shows you that like you can kind of just do anything.
And it's not scary, and you are okay.
Yeah, and you're okay. Of course, like there are safer places for solo travelers as women. And you don't need to go to Europe. You can just go to another city or another town alone. I say take the trip. Honestly, the jobs aren't going anywhere.
Yes.
I know when I say that, people are like, but there could be a recession. The jobs aren't going anywhere. They're not.
I graduated in the worst job market ever. And
you came out okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, you will find something. And if you're smart enough that you've saved up some money, you're going to be smart enough to find a job. So
yeah, I say take the trip, but maybe we're biased. This is Helene's book. Go buy it. Amazon, everywhere.
Everywhere books
are sold. Tell us about the book.
So it's called 2:00 on a Tuesday at Trevi Fountain. And the reason for that is because a pivotal moment happened at that exact time. So the guy in Amsterdam in the bar asked me 50 hours a week, that's criminal. That was 2:00 on a Tuesday.
No.
And I was in a bar in Amsterdam and I thought, oh my God, I'm in a bar in Amsterdam. Like, how cool am I?
So cool.
And I was like, no, Helene. This doesn't have to be once a year or twice a year, that you are taking time off of work to have these pivotal moments.
Yeah.
So this book is about taking your life, taking stock of your life, and turning it into a pivotal life, and moment, and realizing that you can do what you want with your life without actually having to change as a human.
And I know the blood, sweat, and tears you put into this thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. It's also it's pretty funny.
And where can people follow and connect with you?
So I'm Helene at Helene in Between, really everywhere. So HeleneInBetween.com and also on social media.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Helene. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me. This was probably one of my favorite podcasts that I think I've ever done. And I think that you do an incredible job of inspiring people and really helping people live their dreams. So I'm so honored that you would have me here too.